this is the second album in Darkwater's catalogue, coming just before the album Human. So Human is the third album and is actually the most recent one that released in 2019. So Human's a very recent album. I've reviewed that album, so you can go and check on my channel if you haven't to see what my thoughts were. If you just want a quick summary, I really liked the album. It was a really mature album, very complex, very long, an hour, 15 minutes. And as I say, it's got really long songs with a lot of kind of complexity and layering to it, but it's a very simple album at the same time. But they have massive focus elements on things like bass. So there's a focus on a bass here, focus on keys here, focus on guitar here. The key's going to do the simple thing here, but then it's going to change the tone and then sound completely different at this aspect. But then it's like a break from the two. But then between the two, it's like a vast difference. So there's all these really complex layering, but it's all simple what they're playing. So it's a genius album, I thought, but it is a very mature album and quite big to get your head round. But with Where Stories End, this album came out in 2010. So that album actually came out 9 years ago. So it took 9 years to make Human. So there's been this really massive gap. So you think, well, from an album to another album, how big a growth can it be? Well, with 9 years, that's a fair many years for growth. Like when Disturbed went on a hiatus and people thought it was fairly long. It wasn't even anywhere close to 9 years, the hiatus of that band. So, yeah, 9 years. So, just a sum up of how Where Stories End kind of sounds in comparison to Human. Well, it's a lot more simple for starters. The album is 58 minutes, I think. Don't quote me on that. I think it's that, but I might be wrong. It is in the 50 minutes mark, and I think it's 58. As I say, Human is 1 hour 15 minutes. So it's a very shorter album, Where Stories End, but still long in comparison to the majority of albums, which are usually up in the high 40s, like 49 or something. So 58 is still relatively long, but not as long as Human, obviously. So Human has really long tracks and everything. Darkwater, Where Stories End doesn't have a track really that long. And not as complex either. Where Stories End, the music, it has layers to it and some complexity, but it's really straightforward compared to Human. Human was so mature and everything was so perfectly layered. So you had a good emphasis on keys here, a good emphasis on a drum here, a good emphasis on a guitar here. And then the keys in this section, when it gets to the next section, which comes a few seconds later, is going to be a different tone and something completely different to the section it was just playing before. And then they keep adding layers and keep changing, and they never repeat a certain formula in some aspects. So it's a really thought out album with a lot of changing aspects, a lot of layers, a lot of different tones and everything. It's really mature. It has a massive focus on melody. As for Where Stories End, it's just thinking, okay, the song's going to start like this and sound like this, and it seems that there's not a lot of thought put into it. Human sounds like there's a lot of thought put into it and a lot of love put into that album. Where Stories End, I'm sure there was a lot of thought and heart put in, but I just think the 9 years they really actually did develop Human. It feels like they took 9 years to make that album. As for Where Stories End, it just feels like there's some talented guys who in a couple of years made this. And it being 10 years ago, the sound quality actually sounds like it came out years ago. So the sound quality on Where Stories End is really poor, but the production on people on Amazon saying what the production's like say it's absolutely fantastic and it's amazing. I disagree. I think the production is pretty terrible. So that's basically it. So Darkwater, Where Stories End is a lot more straightforward of an album. It's shorter. The tracks are a bit more condensed. The songs are more focuses for Human. Everything is quite grand and quite big and massive and mature. So let's get into the first track then for this album, which is called Breathe. So let's get this subject kind of out the way. The second you kind of start with this track, you're going to notice how bad the production is. Now, as I say, I've looked on Amazon, I've looked at reviews. Reviews and critics like the album. Everyone on Amazon, like every actual review actually mentions the production for how great it is. Therefore, I sent this, the second track after this, to a friend to basically analyse and just see if he thought the same thing or if it's just my system. I've gone through a TV, I've gone through earphones, I've gone through headphones, and everything, the sound was pretty bad. And he basically came back with the same conclusion, that the volume is very low. So you're going to want to turn the volume up. So on headphones, I'm playing on maximum volume with my phone with headphones on, and it is so quiet. There's no punch, there's no absolute bombastic, making my ear bleed type of thing going on. It's just quiet. My TV, my volume's usually around 15. If I want it to basically like fill the room and everything, I'm going all the way up to like volume 22. And so the volume is quite low. But then the next problem is the guitar tone is so thick. So you got the bass, which sounds thick, and then you got the guitar, which basically sounds like the bass. It is so thick, and it sounds like he's playing with an 8-string guitar or something in drop B or something. It's so damn thick and mushy. Basically trying to explain the sound of the guitar, it's kind of like you've got the guitar coming through the amp, and you put a pillow and you cushion it. So then the sound hits the cushion and it just muffles it. So the sound's not coming out clear and everything, it's muffled and adds bass to it because it's been distorted through the pillow. And it seems that the production and the band just went, yeah, that's the sound we want. What a great sound. This muffled, drowned guitar tone, which just, that you pick and then it just expands outwards. And then everything, like the whole mix, there's no highs and lows to the mix either. So you can have a singer and he can be at a certain height, and then the guitar will be at a different height, maybe a bit below, and then a drum may go a bit higher than the guitar, and then the guitar will overtake. And you get different levels. So if you play music and you see the volume levels, you'll see all the levels going up and down, and they bounce around. As for with this album, it sounds like there is a peak. They've put a limit on it, so the sound will never go above that. So it always sounds like there is a ceiling to the sound, and when it gets to that, it just hits it, and then it just expands through the ceiling, so the sound will never peak it. So when all the band basically get to this height, and you would imagine the guitar would peak this, or the singer would then peak, no, it just flatlines at this level. And then because it's so low in the level, it means the whole band can hit that level, so they're all completely monotone. Nothing is higher than the other. There's no piercing lead sound. There's no height to anything. Everything's at a constant level or below it. And as I say, the guitar is so mushy and just sounds suffocated, like just putting a pillow against your amp. So it sounds terrible. And then the volume is so weak. And the best way I've managed is basically playing it in my car, which has obviously 2 big speakers in the front, 2 big speakers at the back. So it seems because of the massive speakers and the variety of speakers, it seems that the mix actually is able to kind of expand and actually, just move around. So everything actually seems to be a bit more cleared and separated. And I can turn the volume up, obviously, to really crazy levels. So then I can actually feel the impact of the sound. So yeah, you're gonna have to obviously choose a decent device to listen to this, because otherwise you're just gonna get a very bleak kind of experience. But as for actually the song itself, obviously the start intro and everything, when the kind of guitar goes in, it's just dun dun dun, and they're trying to go for a thick sound, but because obviously they've really thickened the sound up, it sounds quite atrocious. But you got the keys and everything, and then you do kind of have the bass. The bass sounds fine. It's just a bit disappointing that the guitar is kind of killing the bass now, because they're putting too much emphasis on bass, which makes you therefore kind of hate the bass. So it's pretty unfair on the bass's part, but the bass is nice. The drum's kind of nice, although obviously that bass drum also blends in with the bloody bass, so it's ruining everyone's sounds. The keys work the best because obviously the keys are quite high. You don't really have any bass to keys. I guess you could if you use the right programming, but no, it's the typical kind of key sound, very high and everything, so it's the clearest, brightest sound. Therefore, it is actually a massive breath of fresh air and the most appealing sound compared to this mush that is basically everything else, the guitar, the bass and the drum. And therefore the singer also, he is one of the better improvements. So on this track it's keys and the singer is basically the best performers here. Because the singer is quite high, he has a bit of a low end to his voice, so it's not just, you know, absolutely piercing, he does have a bit of roundness to his delivery. He's a great vocalist. The pre-chorus is the best part of the song musically and rhythmically because it has a really nice flow to it and a really nice rhythm. The solo starts with keyboards. It's a very fast key solo, then it leads into a guitar, which has a bit of a kind of decent pace kind of groove to it, and then it goes back to the keys, which kind of slow it kind of down a little bit, and then leading back into something that gets it back to the chorus. Now, solo-wise compared to Human, this is quite fast compared to Human. Human, the solos were very musical and very kind of slow and drawn out, as for this obviously had a bit of power to it. And also comparing this song to the first track, the beginning off of Human, both are kind of going for the same thing. It's basically the more simple song of the album. Like the beginning is quite simple compared to the rest of the album, which is Human. And this track is quite simple compared to the rest of the tracks. It is just one of them more upbeat, simplistic, fun songs just to easily get you into the album. Now, as I say, I compare this to the beginning because it kind of is going for the same goal and everything, but it is different. The beginning has a great mix. Also, they put lots of emphasis on each member in the beginning. There is a lot more layers with the beginning as well. As for this, they don't really utilize different people as much as they do in Human to have them all play their certain part and be great at it and show the great musicianship with each person. And then the sound quality, as I said, is bad. There's not as much layering going on as the beginning had. So it's a simple song. The production really kind of ruins it, but the pre-chorus really sounds nice. The keys are good. The solo is pretty damn good as well, and vocally it's great. From the first verse to the second verse, they add a bit more kind of notes to the kind of guitar. Then they have a little bit of a different section before it hits the chorus again. So they do have the odd kind of change up. But as I said, because everything's so mushy, you don't really get the full impact of the change up. You can hear it, but you don't really get a good distinguished sound from it. There's not, because of the articulation, it's not really there. So it is a good track. It's just because of the production, it really does wane the experience. Because I've listened to Human, I've really got into it and really come to appreciate that. I can really understand the song for what it is, but it is very difficult. You really have to kind of appreciate the bands just to kind of overcome this production. So let's get on to the second track, which is Why I Bleed. So my favourite track on the album, yeah, Why I Bleed, I think, is the most fun song on the album. It's got a fair decent amount to it. It lasts 8 minutes 16 seconds, so there is a lot of room there for a few different layers. The song actually starts off immediately off the gate quite nicely because it's just violins, that's it. So it's just like I can just take this little section just to appreciate the violin here, just not overly because I'm not, into the orchestra. I don't go and listen to orchestras, so I'm not that heavily into it, but just a tiny, sort of piece of violin music, I really appreciate it. Just as long as it doesn't, overstay its welcome, which it doesn't. So really appreciate that. And when the guitars come in, it's a kind of quicker pace than that of Breathe, because with the track Breathe, the guitar, it was that just kind of heavy chug type thing. So dun 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 dun. Because as I said, how thick that sound is, doing that kind of chugging thing really makes it thick. So because what I believe was the guitar rhythm for this intro part, because it's going at a bit of a faster kind of pace and everything, it doesn't, you know, hold the note, so it actually can expand and be that bassy. So because it keeps going and everything, it has a bit more of an articulation to it, a bit more of a bite. Again, it is still overly bass heavy, way too much low end to it. I think it's treble you need actually to kind of get out of this aspect. I'm not too sure, but more mids and treble. I think it's just got way too much bass and low to it. You know, it's got a bit of a better kind of pace to it, so it does kind of help. It's a lot more clear, but as I say, it's still quite bad. It's just better than Breathe was. The keys are doing their own kind of thing and everything, and then we get to another part which before the singer starts, where you got the guitar do its own thing, the key does its own thing. It's very bright and everything. It's kind of playing what the chorus will be when it gets to it. So it's really bright, quite musical what the keys are doing, and the guitar kind of does its kind of pause and here and there. Then when the actual singer comes in, it's a clean guitar just with these kind of female sounding voices in the background. It's probably the keyboardist doing it actually, but it sounds kind of female singing. So clean guitar with the vocal, and obviously it's melodic and it's quite kind of dark and everything. Then it goes to the next aspect of the verse, which the guitar actually completely cuts out, and it's basically just singer and bass, which I like. This is the thing which I really liked with the Human album, because with bass, usually the bass just follows the rhythm line of the rhythm guitar, so you never really fully hear the bass. It's never doing its own thing, its own lead. And because there's no guitar here, it's just pure bass. The bass is doing the rhythm. And because the rhythm actually sounds quite nice and everything, I can actually appreciate bass for what it is here, as for in a lot of other bands, I have no appreciation for the bass whatsoever. I have no time for it, don't care. Here I care, because I can actually hear it and I can appreciate the sound of it and the rhythm it's got going. I can appreciate what the player is doing and the capability, so I like that. And then obviously it then gets to the next elevation, where the keys come in and it's very kind of bright, it's got a lot more energy to it, so it's guitars. And then it goes into the chorus, which is just so high energy. It's such a fun sounding chorus and everything. The vocal is amazing, the keys are amazing, the guitar going with it is amazing, tone-wise crap, but everything else brilliant. But because again it has that really level to it, and then the bass is so rounded out, and because there's a level to the volume, there's no highs to it, so everything is so shut down. It's just like, this is fun and everything, but can you keep it down to this level? Therefore you don't feel the energy being fully delivered. You know it's there, but you are not getting it, and it is so frustrating because it's such an awesome sounding chorus, and at the end it's just a constant line, this is why I breathe, and it's just like, God, and he says it again twice, so it's, this is why I breathe, and the guitar's going, it's just like, you want to scream it with him, and you spelt it out yourself, because it's so catchy and amazing, you just really want to sing along. It's just like, the energy is so lacking, it's just like, I want to sing along, and it's just like, at the same time, I don't fully feel the energy to do it. I'm sort of there, but not fully. It really is such a shame, because damn, it's so really amazing. So then the next verse section, the guitar is not clean anymore, and you got like drum and things, so you got a bit more going on. And then the part where it's bass, it's actually guitar as well. Then you got the rest of the band coming in again, but they kind of rhythmically kind of change a few odd things around. The solo for this part is amazingly thought out, because it starts kind of like jazzy, kind of bluesy, so it has a few kind of fancy bits to it, and then a bit of a pause, a bit more fancy elements, and then it just builds this incredible speed, and then it just goes and slows down, so it just builds a speed, and then it peaks, and then it's just, okay, let's hold on to everything, play each note calmly, just hold and wait, and then build the speed, and then increases the speed, and it goes into this really catchy rhythmic thing, and then it ends. Brilliantly done, because you got this slow kind of jazzy, nice sounding bit, and you got that incredible build of sound where you really are just energetically coming up, but then it doesn't hold it. So then you have to come down, and then all that energy that was being built up, it just leaves it there, as it does this really nice hold part, and then it builds it up again. So you're not just fully just getting the energy out, it keeps your energy levels constantly there without getting fed up, bored, or fully letting all the energy out immediately. So then later you don't really care as much. It constantly keeps you invested because it constantly keeps evolving and changing. It brings the energy up, and then it brings the relaxation, then it brings some fun elements, and then back with the energy with this intense speed. Incredible solo. I love the solo. It's absolutely amazing, this solo. I really like it. Really well thought out. And again, the chorus, amazing. And then the bass part in that first verse is the fact that they actually just have the bass speak for itself. Brilliant, because not that many bands do that, and I appreciate it. Because I usually don't give a crap about the bloody bass. So I like the structure, I love the funness of the chorus, the solo great, the layering brilliant. The production, unbelievably shit. So, it's a great track, but this was what I actually showed to my friend, and then he came back saying I never want to listen to this album because the sound quality was so shit. And this, I think, is the best track on this album. And he heard it, and he says he doesn't really want to listen to this album because it sounds shit production-wise. He did say the band sounds confident, but the production is just so bloody terrible, he doesn't want to put himself through it. So, yeah, it's such a shame because, God, it's really good. I would suggest, if you wanted to do this first, then go to Human, I would suggest do Human first and really get into the band and get invested with the band, and then go to this album so you actually can appreciate it and you're already invested with what the band is. That is kind of how I'd approach it. Obviously, you don't have to do as I really say, because, well, I can't force you. But I would recommend. So let's get into the next track, which is Into the Cold. So Into the Cold has some other kind of fascinating elements to it in a certain kind of section. So I'll say where that is, but obviously I'm going to start right at the beginning. So the song kind of starts quite heavily kind of key forward, so the kind of tone the keys kind of have reminds me of a very kind of old school kind of sound era, so somewhere in like 60s kind of something with like, you know, heavy keys from that kind of era, like 60s, 70s. It's got a bit of a mirror kind of sound to it as well, so it's had Tunisian as well, but it's very kind of old school sounding. The guitar tone is actually quite light here, so because it's got more of a lightness to it, obviously that takes out some of that bass, so it sounds a bit better because of that. But then as it keeps progressing, there's about 3 different versions of the intro. You've got that first part and then the middle part, and then the last part, which has more of the kind of rhythmic energy to it, with you know, the kind of the more bass kind of guitar and then prominent kind of keys. Good rhythm and everything, but obviously the guitar tone pretty crap. As for the verse, this is kind of where the interesting part comes in, because I actually believe there is no guitar. And it could be because, as I say, the guitar sounds very bass heavy, so it's hard to really tell when it's bass nor guitar, because it's so bloody bass orientated. But I'm pretty sure that it's the bass. As I say, I could be wrong, but I think it's bass. And if it is, then again, I like that I'm just getting the bass to actually do the rhythms and everything, so I can actually appreciate the sound of bass. And then it's just kind of like vocals, there's not really much to it. And then when it actually goes to the next area, it is just kind of drums and keys. So there's still no guitar. I think there is maybe one very small section in this part that I think is a guitar, but it's very small and it only might be the guitar, it may not be. And then it goes back to kind of it being just drum, bass, keys. And then when it gets to the chorus, you can definitely tell there's the guitar. So we may have actually had an entire verse of no guitar whatsoever. It's just a focus on it being keys, guitar, and drums. Now people kind of say, well, I want to hear the guitar, I want to hear his talent and everything. But you got solos to do that. You actually had the kind of whole intro, you have some leads in certain parts. when does the drums and the bass ever get a lead and a mention where you can actually appreciate them? Because the guitar usually does a lot of the forward work, which is why I have a massive appreciation for the guitar, because it is the most fun instrument that has a lot of showmanship to it. So the fact that I've had a whole verse of like multiple bass rhythms and tones and things, as well as keys and drum and everything, I can really appreciate all the kind of drumming and the bass and everything. I haven't got the guitar that kind of drowns all that out, and now I'm focusing on the guitar, because that's usually where I always focus to, because I like that instrument the most. So I know a lot of people who really like the guitar may kind of think it's a bit bland and everything, because they're completely missing one instrument. I think they are, as I say, I could be wrong. But I hope that the whole bass is guitar is gone. So it is actually all just this focus on the bass and the guitar and the keys, while there's all these other parts where you will get a focus on guitar. It has plenty of areas to show the guitar. Let me have an appreciation for the other things. And I like that they do that, because bands don't. And Darkwater do that, they did it with Human and they're doing it here. I really appreciate the showmanship of each member, having them speak, have their moment, have their section to shine. I love that, because it shows the musicianship. As with the choruses, they all come in and everything. It's got a good kind of dark kind of rhythm to it and everything. Dark one because it's so really bass heavy, but it's definitely got a nice rhythm to it. I think it's supposed to sound more than what it does, because as I say, there is kind of a ceiling to as high as it can go, and it can't go past that. So again, it's like, I think there's supposed to be a certain energy to this and a certain vibe, because it hits that ceiling. I am not getting it, and I know there is supposed to be a bit more of an oomph to it, but it's not there. But for what is there musically, what they are doing and portraying, obviously, mixing aside, is really nice. I like it. It's got a dark and nice kind of rhythm to it. It's a good show of keys and guitar and everything, and good pauses, and then the vocalist. Great rhythm. So I really appreciate it. The second verse, the guitar actually obviously comes back. The guitar is quite prevalent through the entire verse this time, so that is where the difference is. The guitar is usually always there. As for the solo, again, there's no kind of key solo like there was in the previous track. And the solo here, a little disappointing, because it is just kind of all shred bass, and it doesn't last that long. So that's the thing with Darkwater, like, they've had, with Breathe, they've had key, guitar, key, and here it's guitar done, and it's very short. So it's like, you could have easily filled this, clearly, but you chose not to. And then you only did the one pattern, like with the previous track, it was really well thought out. I'm going to start slow and bluesy and jazzy, then I'm going to use speed, then I'm going to use a lot of holds and everything, just hold my notes and everything, I'm going to speak out, a lot of speed, and then a really kind of fun, energetic kind of end to the solo. So multiple layers and things going on. As for this, it's just shred, that's it. When you compare it to the album Human, you only had like the one fast solo in the whole album. Everything else was so slow to go with the vibe of that album. As for here, we've actually had a fair few fast stuff. So technically I like that, because obviously they play to the sound of the album, so you can tell how different a vibe this album is to therefore Human. So I can appreciate it for that, but again, I kind of want more to it, even still, that it's like, oh well, this is shred, you don't really get anything like that on Human, so this is the album for kind of that and everything, and more of a focus on that. It's like, well, you could do a more focus on shred, but be a bit varied about it, so kind of disappointing with that, very, because he's pretty damn good on guitar. He's not, a god on the instruments, but he really thinks about it, therefore he can really do some great solos. Same with the keyboardist. And the fact they can go back and forth, you get really big, intense solos, good variation, because you've got guitar and key, both sound completely different, both two different instruments. And then they both think about it and layer what they're doing. So you get really good solos. It's just a real shame about that one. So let's get on to the last track for this part one, which is going to be A Fool's Utopia. So again, the start of this track is actually quite different compared to all the ones before it. It's a melodic start, which we haven't really got on this album for a start intro. So it starts with a clean guitar, nice tone, bit of subtle cymbals from the drums, and then it goes over to the bass with more kind of bass drums and things like that. No guitar, it's basically just the bass and the drum, and then the full band come in with their keys and guitar and drums and bass. The key has a certain tone, but then it does a bit of a kind of fancy lead in sections where it changes the tone of the keys. So I kind of like that the key actually do that, because usually keyboardists, from what I've heard at least, usually stick with the one kind of sound, but the fact that he kind of keeps venturing into different kind of tones and things and using different effects and things, I just think it opens it up a bit and makes it feel like there is more keys going on than usual. Not to the same extent as Human, it kind of sounded like there was about 3 or 4 blue keyboards at the same time as for here. It doesn't really feel like that. You can kind of tell, yeah, this is still the one guy, but it could be 2. So not really done to the same effect as Human, but I still really appreciate the fact that he does keep using different tones. The verse, again, it's starting softer. It's a bit more kind of mellow, this one, than the other tracks. It still gets heavier, but overall it is probably more mellow. So you got clean guitar sections, you got the bass, which is doing something separate to the guitar. So I do like that. So the bass is not really copying the guitar. Then you've got drums, and you've got keys, and then when it heightens up and everything, you got keys kind of like changing tone, doing like different tonal leads, keys and everything. The guitar does that stupid bass tone of what it's doing. And then the bass, I think, kind of starts fitting into the guitar, because obviously it's very bass orientated, so it does kind of drown out. So they could be doing something quite different, but it's hard to say, because the sound goes a bit mushy in that sector of kind of heavy guitar and bass. The chorus is not really the best. It's the worst one so far, just because it doesn't really feel like it's up in the ante compared with how the verse ended. It kind of seemed like the last part of the verse had a peak, and then the chorus kind of just sort of continues it. It doesn't really elevate and heighten the energy or do something more kind of musical or that. It's just like, it's just something different. And that's kind of it. So a bit of a shame, but the fact that everything so far has been really, really good, only problem being really production, is not too bad a deal, but obviously it would have been good if it was kind of consistent and did have a kind of more improved heightened chorus, something a bit more kind of melodic and nice sounding, instead of just not really anything special. Nothing really energetic, nothing really musical. It's a chorus. Solos actually are now improved. So the last one was pretty poor, and the 2 before that, the solos were really good, but they were just guitar. Now we get the really long sections of jumping between guitar and keys. So brilliant. So how does it start? Well, the guitar again is doing something pretty fast orientated. You just start kind of changing it up near the end and doing some really cool rhythms and everything. And then it goes to the keys, which are a bit frantic and everything, but then you start taking more interesting rhythms and holds and things. So again, both having different sections, both well thought out and well structured, the way they approach the solos. So 2 long solos, guitar with speed, and then more of a thought out kind of musical thing near the end. Same with the keyboardist, a bit frantic at the start, and then opening things up, going a bit more musical orientated, a bit more rhythm to it. So I really like the solos here, the rhythms they have in their solos. They really think about it, so when they actually start the rhythm, it just sounds nice. The rhythm is so nice and so catchy. It's like, God, that's a good rhythm. So obviously they nail it, because that's what I'm left thinking. What a great rhythm. And if that's what they're doing with the rhythm, then they accomplished it. So And then the speedy parts, again, it's not, you know, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Sinister Gates type of bloody shred or anything, but it's really good shred, so perfect. It's like, I can't complain, it's really good. So yeah, I like the start with taking it apart, and then there's like 3 elements, and I like the burst and everything, and I really like the solo. The solo is incredible, but the chorus, it's just a shame. So that kind of does it for part 1. I hope to see you guys in part 2. Until then, I'll see you later. Bye guys.